to the Durham Planning Commission. The members of the Durham Planning Commission have been appointed by the City Council and the Board of County Commissioners. And you should know that any of the items before us this evening will go to the final vote to the commissioners, the City Council or the County Commissioners after coming through the Planning Commission this evening. Tonight's meeting is being held on the Zoom meeting virtual platform. And you should know that in this platform that public participants do not have the ability to talk or be seen on video by default. And to maintain meeting decorum and a discernible record of the meeting, the chat function has been disabled. Speakers on each item will be given the ability to speak. Many of you have signed up in advance, and we have your names and we'll read them off in the order that you signed up. We'll call your name. We'll then make sure that we turn on your microphone and you'll be given the opportunity to give your name, your address, and give your remarks. And we will also offer the opportunity, if you haven't signed up in advance, to give you the ability to speak. So at the end of each hearing, we'll see if anyone else would like to speak. You can digitally raise your hand. You can press *9 on your phone to digitally raise your hand and you'll be able to speak. If you would like to call in for tonight's meeting and you haven't called in yet, you can dial 1-301-715-8592. And that way you can join the meeting and then you can digitally raise your hand if you would like to speak during one of the public hearings this evening. Finally, all motions are stated in the affirmative. So if a motion fails or ties, the recommendation is not favorable. Thanks again for joining us. And can we have the roll call, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. Commissioner Amendolia?
Here.
Commissioner Baker?
Here.
Chair Busby?
Here.
Commissioner Cameron?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin? Commissioner Johnson?
Present.
Vice Chair Kinchin?
Here.
Commissioner Lanfrey will be absent. Commissioner Lowe? He's not on the call yet. Commissioner McIver?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Morgan?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
Chair Busby, did you want to wait and see if Commissioner Lowe joins before we do the motion to excuse, or did you want to go ahead and do the motion for Commissioner Lamb?
Let's go ahead and wait, and that way we can just do one motion.
Okay, we'll circle back in a little bit.
Great, thank you. I did want to note as well that this is for commissioners, but also for everyone watching, that the people who have been helping us with closed captioning for all of our meetings, and they've been doing this for all the virtual meetings that have been taking place, they have requested that after about every 2 hours, we take a very short break. So the individual that's doing the closed captioning has the opportunity to stretch and to stay comfortable, keep their health in good health. So we're going to start to implement that tonight. That's been a request made of all the different bodies that are meeting. And so I'll just be working with staff. But I wanted to let you know that we'll try to take about 10 minutes every 2 hours or so, and we'll try to give you a heads up before we head into a case that after that case, we'll take a break. So I know we've been taking breaks, but they'll be a little more frequent than we've been doing them before. With that, I'd like to move forward with the approval of the minutes and the consistency statements for our November 10th meeting. Any comments or feedback on those? And if not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I missed who made the motion. Okay, thank you. Motion by Commissioner Durkin, seconded by Commissioner Miller, and we will have the roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Amendolia?
Yes.
Commissioner Baker?
Yes.
Chair Busby?
Yes.
Commissioner Cameron?
Yes.
Commissioner Durkin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kinchin?
Yes.
Commissioner Lowe, I don't think is on the call yet. Commissioner McIver?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
and Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, for adjustments to the agenda, I know that after we got our packet, you notified us that there would also be a information item on the industrial land use study. Is that correct?
Unmute, Grace.
Oh, sorry. We added that to the agenda and sent a revised agenda out. So it should be on the agenda that you received email, and we posted a new agenda. So yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you. And then, so we don't need a motion on that, but in addition, the committee that Commissioner Baker has been chairing has been meeting, and we would like to add an item at the very end of tonight's meeting agenda for the committee to give the Planning Commission an update on its work and its expected project and feedback coming forward. It'll probably be about a 10-minute update with a presentation and questions and answers. So I would ask that we do make a motion to add that to tonight's agenda.
So
We'll
moved.
add that under new business.
Please.
Correct. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner Morgan. And we'll have a roll call vote on the adjustment to the agenda.
So we're going to go quick. Amendolia,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Busby,
Yes.
Cameron,
Yes.
Durkin,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Kinchin.
Yes.
I don't think Lowe is on the call. MacGyver,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith, you have a future in auctioneering if you would like it. That was great. We will move to our first agenda item.
Let me make the announcement about the notification. I would just like to state for the record that all of the notices were carried out in accordance with state and local law, and affidavits for those notices are on file in the planning department and on our computers. Thank you.
Thank you. So our first hearing this evening is the Gillings Tract. This is case Z2000005, and we will start with the staff report.
Great. Good evening, Chair Busby, Vice Chair Kinchin, and honorable commissioners. I'm Alexander Cahill here, Senior Planner in the Planning Department, and I'm happy to be here with you tonight. I'll be presenting on the Gillings Tract zoning map change, Z2000005. So this is an application from Stephen Dorn of Lennar Corporation for 4001 4110 Page Road. It's currently in the county. The site acreage is about 21 acres in the suburban development tier. The existing zoning on this site is residential rural, and the proposed rezoning request is for a PDR 4.447. This is a FLUM designation of industrial, and staff is recommending a FLUM designation of low to medium density residential to accommodate the zoning change and inconsistent zoning. And the proposal is up to 90 townhouse residential units. You can see in the agenda packet that you got the zoning change and how it fits in with the context of the area and surrounding nature of it. And you can also see in the future land use map where the existing industrial is surrounded by different adjacent FLUM designations, but a propensity of residential designations. There are a lot of key text commitments in this Gillings Tract project that you hopefully saw in the development plan that was attached. But just to cover some of them very quickly, this dedication of a 20-foot of right-of-way for the frontage of the site along Page Road. There's the reservation of 60 feet of right-of-way for the proposed Chin Page Road. There's construction of an exclusive southbound left turn lane with adequate storage and appropriate tapers. This is on Page Road at Site Access 1 on your development plan. There's construction of an exclusive northbound right turn lane with adequate storage as well. Again, on Page Road at Site Access 1. There's a minimum of 5 foot of additional asphalt in addition to the proposed roadway improvements that will be provided for the full frontage of the south side of Page Road. And a lot of these commitments were added to address potential roadway impacts and concerns about transportation. There's some graphic commitments as well in the development plan. Site access points are included. Boundary buffers are included, including a 20-foot project boundary buffer. There's a 50-foot stream buffer on the development plan, graphically represented, and there are additionally 10-foot no-build lines. There's also the location of tree coverage, which includes both protection and replacement areas that we'll talk about towards the end of this presentation. I'm not going to go through all the design commitments because I hope you had a chance to look at them. The applicant worked very hard to respond to staff recommendations about potential design commitments, especially in an area that was initially supposed to, was flummed for industrial and is going to now be a PDR 4.447 residential. And so they took the staff recommendations. They also had some that they proposed themselves, and together came up with a very robust list of design commitments. You can see the aerial map of where this is located for larger context, just right here south of Page Road. We've been including the development plan in case you didn't have a chance to look over your agenda packet. We know it's a lot of information to go over, but you can also see where the stream buffer is denoted and graphically represented, where the project boundary buffers are on the proposed conditions page, excuse me. So for this project, the required tree save is 24%. And the applicant has committed to preserving 29%, a minimum 15% for preservation, and then a minimum 14% for replacement on the overall site. Staff did review against comprehensive plan policies, and hopefully you had time to review in your staff report, which did include references to the industrial land use study as well. I did want to point out some quick corrections. If you're detail oriented, hopefully, like a lot of us are, the applicant is Stephen Dorn of Lennar. That was incorrect on the staff report in the first paragraph. And then attachment 9, the utility information and how it will be connected. I just want to make sure you note that the sewer is actually within Durham County Sewer Service, and all sewer extensions shall be performed in accordance with Durham County requirements and not City of Durham requirements. So just want to make sure I called out that note. So staff did find this is consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan and suburban tier designation. This proposal might be in the community's best interest because it does offer additional housing inventory at a sale price that is currently proposed but not guaranteed below market rate. If you notice in the staff report, there is an additional section with that information that we will begin including to hopefully help fill in the context of these conversations. And then in addition, this is another project that moves to reflum the area from an industrial designation that moved into a residential designation, which is really a more appropriate use for this area and the surrounding context. In addition to that, staff is beginning to track those flum changes because we know, based on that study that you hear about later tonight, there's a certain amount of land that's designated for industrial, and we want to make sure we're tracking the ones that we propose to be changed or reflummed. And with that, staff is available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. I appreciate it. At this point, we will open the public hearing, and we have 3 individuals who have signed up to speak. They are all part of the applicant: Charlie Yoakley, Neil Ghosh, and Jesse Hardesty. And so I'll let whoever is the appropriate person kick us off.
Sure, and good evening, Chair Busby, Vice Chair Kenshin, and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Neil Ghosh. I am an attorney with the Morningstar Law Group at 112 West Main Street in Durham, and I'm representing the applicant for this project tonight. As Chair Busby mentioned, we also have Jesse Hardesty, and I believe Ryan Akers from McAdams with us tonight, and Charlie Yoakley, who is with Lennar, and they are available to answer your questions. This project is interesting because of where the property sits. The property currently is zoned RR, but the flum designation for the property is industrial. The area across the street largely has been developed for residential. The property to the south is zoned industrial, but is slated for something like a boarding school. The site plan for the project already has been approved. The Durham County line is on the eastern side of the parcel and backs up to an area in Cary, which is more of a light industrial area. The rezoning request covers only 20 acres of the parcel. The portion we intend to rezone is, I guess, north and west of the stream feature and the existing 265-foot wide power easement. So those items largely are outside the requested rezoning area. So what you're left with is a 20-acre parcel with frontage along Page Road. The project will consist of 90 townhomes with at least 2 different options. Overall, that's a pretty small project, but the density is much greater than what is currently allowed on the site and similar to the densities of the residential areas to the west. But we do think, there's a commitment in the development plan that no more than 70% of the units would have 2-car garages. So there will be both 1- and 2-car garage units, and they're all townhomes. So despite the size of the project, it does have pretty significant frontage on Page Road, and the development will be building half of the ultimate road section, which requires an additional 25 feet of right-of-way dedication. And the future extension of Chin Page Road is planned through a portion of this property. The applicant will be dedicating, or rather reserving, the 60-foot wide right-of-way where the extension is planned across the property. In addition to a northbound right turn lane and a southbound left turn lane on Page Road at the site access, the developer also is committing to a 5-foot wide bike lane across the frontage. Ultimately, we think this is a sensible plan for a residential infill development. The current slum for the area does not really track with what actually is on the ground, and we believe this project will be a better result than what the current comprehensive plan calls for. So we hope to have your support tonight. We have our team available to answer your questions, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Ghosh. As I mentioned, no one else has signed up to speak, but I do want to give that opportunity. So if anyone would like to speak on this agenda item, you can raise your hand. Again, you can press *9 and raise your hand and we will recognize you. So no one else is asked to speak, so we will close the hearing. And commissioners, we will come to you. Commissioner Miller, you've got your hand raised. The floor is yours. You're on mute, Commissioner Miller.
So I'm looking at the development plan and I'm not sure I understand it very well. So I look at the legend and it says that the zoning boundary line is that blocky line that seems to run all over the place and doesn't close on the maps that I've got and doesn't seem to correspond with the maps that the staff provided in the staff report. So what is the property to be rezoned?
Yeah, Tom, I noticed that too, and that's a fair question. The property to be rezoned is, generally speaking, is that kind of shaded area that has the lines running through it.
So on the second sheet of the, I guess it's probably the third sheet of the
development plan.
Right, the legend calls that building and parking envelope, except for that it's actually bigger than that.
Yeah, it's a little bit bigger than that. So you can see where the I guess the right-of-way reservation is occurring. That's part of. And
yours. Yeah. So yeah, that's. Can we fix that? I don't think this is a competent development plan as it appears, because the existing conditions map doesn't actually describe the property to be rezoned, and none of this corresponds. At least I don't think it corresponds with the change as it's illustrated in the staff report, which shows the parcel extending to the east and south across the buffered stream.
Yeah, Tom, I'll let staff speak to that, but so it's one parcel that what staff has indicated in their zoning exhibit on that map. That's the whole entire parcel.
That's the parcel, but it's not the parcel to be rezoned.
Right, and that's what I was gonna say. We're only rezoning a portion of that parcel. And I did notice that on the staff report, I'm not sure if staff has a clean way to shade in a portion of a parcel, but,
Certainly.
you're correct. That exhibit is not quite accurate in the staff report.
Right, so Mr. Miller, are you, let me just clarify to make sure we clean this up accordingly. I think I'm following what you're saying, and I'll let Alexander jump back in as well.
So if,
Our context map shows the entire parcel, but it really is not the entire parcel. That
right, it says the case area, it shows case area, which is
Right.
actually much larger than
It
the
is.
actual case area.
Yeah, we can fix that. It probably was where we pulled, we're having someone help us with our maps, and they may have pulled the whole pit, not the actual boundary of the part that's being rezoned. So we'll correct that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
And so my next technical question is between exhibits 9 and attachment 9 and 10, there is a Coulter Jewel Thames map showing an illustrative street layout for water lines. And I don't think it has anything to do with this property, but maybe it does, and I don't understand.
Go ahead, Mr.
I can
Cato.
jump in. No, it looks like the wrong summary utility development statement was attached. I tried to point that out in the presentation, but our.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
No, that's our fault. So we can email that over so you have it.
I don't need to see it. I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding or not understanding. So I have a couple of questions to the substance. So the design commitments matter to me, and there's not a design commitment concerning, let me start with this. I'm not sure I understand what kind of units are going to be built or what the words on the development plan mean when it says that the units will include a maximum of 90 townhouse units. Does that mean that other units might appear, but if there are townhouses, there will not be more than 90? Or does it mean that it will only be townhouses and not more than 90?
So it is only townhouses and not more than 90. If you look at the text commitment 6, I think it might be clearer there. I'm not sure exactly where you were looking.
So, let me. No, that's what it says. It says within the zoning will include townhouse units with a maximum of 90. Well, the word include indicates that it could be anything, but it will include townhouses, but there won't be more than 90 of them. And I don't think that's not a limitation to townhouses. It's saying that there will be at least one townhouse building, but there won't be more than 90 units when there are townhouses. It's just not, I don't think that language means a limitation to townhouse units. I'm not necessarily arguing for a limitation to townhouse units, but I don't think that the way that's written, that include word is not, it doesn't exclude. In other words, if I was writing it, the use, I wouldn't say permitted uses, I would say uses within the PDR zoning district shall be townhouses not to exceed 90 units, period. So there's that. And then I wanted to ask that in the design commitments that the units are going to be contemporary architectural colors. I looked at my box of Crayola and none of them were marked contemporary architectural colors. What are contemporary architectural colors?
And I am looking for that language.
In the design commitments.
Yes, I'm looking.
Neil, I have it pulled up on the screen as well.
It's the fourth dot under distinctive architectural features.
Contemporary architectural colors will be utilized. Well, I have to be honest with you, Mr. Miller. I don't know what that is.
It seems to me that I think it is possible to have a commitment for colors that is broad, like it is not unusual to see commitments to, say, earth tones, because I believe that we all kind of know what earth tones are, but contemporary architectural colors is not something that, in my opinion, unless there's a manual out there that architects all know what that means, and I don't, because I'm not familiar with it, which I hold is entirely possible, but I'm not sure I know what that means. And then finally, when you were working with staff about the design commitments, did you talk at all about some of the things that have concerned the Planning Commission over these last few months, like block lengths and the placement and type of developed open space or recreation space?
So certainly staff mentioned those, particularly the block length question. And this site went through a couple iterations that included more or less acreage from time to time. So as we were working through it, we were not able to commit to a particular block length, but the site is only 20 acres. And I don't know I don't know what the block length will be in this, but, you know, I suppose we could look into that and get you an answer on that. I don't know if someone on the call, perhaps Jesse or Ryan, has some more insight as to what the ultimate layout would look like. I guess not.
So, and then I wanted to, so something that does matter to me in projects like this, and 20 acres is kind of at the point when I begin to expect to see it. I like to see there to be some sort of designed or developed open space that is not on the edge of the property, but is somewhere in the middle, and that the units face it, so that it is a visual amenity. It can be a walking destination and not stuck away in a buffer or in a tree save area where it can do double duty to requirements. And I would like to see a commitment. It doesn't have to necessarily, it can be shown in the development plan. That's one way to express the commitment. But if at least some sort of text that says that there will be, you know, a park or garden or something like that. It doesn't have to be gigantic. That's so that there is relief in the streetscape with some sort of, like I said, some sort of green feature. And I'm disappointed that we don't see it in this. I spent some time working with a developer and designers earlier this week on another parcel that will be coming to us later, and they had put a great deal of thought into how to work those kinds of things in. I was very impressed, and I was kind of hoping to see it here too, because this project is like a lot of projects, and that we're building in the suburban tier. And if we expect development in our suburban tier to be better, then today is the day we should start doing that. And Mr. Chairman, those are my questions and concerns. I'll be interested to hear what other commissioners have to say. I haven't decided how I'll vote in this case.
Thanks, Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Cameron?
Sure. Hey, I was just wondering, because I couldn't tell on this development plan when you talk about where the entry is going to be off of Page Road, especially as it relates to Chin Page Road, because I know that intersection over there is kind of weird. Where is the entry going to be into the townhome development?
So that's a great question. The So the development plan shows 3 points of access, and that ultimately is going to determine the, I guess, kind of the block configuration within the development. The entrance is going to be at site access 1, which is off Page Road. Obviously, the access point shown kind of southwest from there will ultimately be a stub to the property line, which at current won't go anywhere, but as properties develop, could provide future connectivity. Chin Page Road is an existing road. However, that portion of the road is not existing. That is a future extension. So that there will not be a access point on Chin Page Road until the extension is built.
But across the street there on the other side, that is an existing road, correct?
Yeah, where Chin Page Road is across the street. That's what you're asking.
Yes.
So so if you can see on the development plan, kind of to the left of where it says PDR, there's an arrow out on Page Road. That's the access point, and that would be the access point on Page Road. There is not a second access point on Page Road. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It was weird. Look, thank you. I didn't get it.
All right, thank you.
And Commissioner Cameron, any additional questions?
I'm done. Thank you.
You bet. I see that Ryan Akers had raised his hand earlier, and Mr. Ghosh, is Mr. Akers part of your team? Is that correct?
He sure is, yes.
Okay. So I'd like to recognize you because I know Commissioner Miller had asked a question that you might be able to answer. So
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good evening. This is Ryan Akers. I'm the engineer of record for the project. Commissioner Miller had some points about block perimeter. I don't have the actual numbers in front of me. I think they're about 450 feet between the points of access, but I did want to point out that this is a gridded layout that we have in conceptual plan. The main access point that Mr. Ghosh alluded to off of Page Road is a median divided that does terminate as you head down towards the Duke Energy easement down the hill. We do have an amenity area that is centrally located in conceptual form. Obviously, with the development plan, we don't show that level of detail, but that is in the plan, and I very much agree with what Mr. Miller alluded to from a planning standpoint. So that will be in the practice when we do the actual development.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
you may.
So I appreciate that, but is there not a way in at least your text commitments to say that, and giving yourself plenty of leeway and room to maneuver, or that the development will include these features? In other words, it's all well and good to talk about what might appear in the site plan, but at the zoning level, I'd like to elevate that and to get those in your list of design commitments. Again, I realize that the business of creating site plans can be complicated, and that your understanding of the project can change. So leave yourself plenty of room to maneuver. But I like to see a text commitment saying that the units are going to be in proximity to designed open space, a greener open space, and that it won't, and that'll be located. One or more of those will be located in the interior of the property and not tucked around the edges, and it won't be behind units. And the same thing goes for block length and block perimeter. If you are conceiving a grid pattern, then set yourself some limits so that you have lots of room to maneuver. You could even express it in terms of averages or within ranges. But I know I would feel better about voting on this if those commitments were present.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Chair Busby, can I jump in real quick? I just wanted to say, so staff consulted about the design commitment and agrees that if this project went forward, we would need to remove the contemporary colors, design commitment, and or reword to clarify from an architectural palette standpoint.
I think we may have lost our chair.
I think we lost the chair.
I was wondering what happened.
Yeah,
So he woke up.
It got weird. It got weird. I'm
Maybe
back.
we're talking.
Thanks for bearing with the technical difficulties. So, Mr. Cahill, I heard you were saying that the design commitment on the contemporary colors needed to come out. Is that where we're at this point?
It will need to either come out or need to be clarified to have, pastel muted colors, something from an architectural palette.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ghosh and the applicant team, if you want to respond to that now, you're welcome to do that. If you'd like a couple minutes, I can go to Commissioner Johnson, who raised his hand as well. So let me know what your pleasure.
I'll just say, we agree it should be removed. We can remove that commitment. It doesn't, the way it's written doesn't really mean anything. So we go ahead and remove it.
Okay, so you're fine to remove that item from your plan?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. We will go to Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess I'm providing more thoughts than questions here. So my initial thought was when I was seeing the request, so I'm familiar with this area very much. And so I'm not too concerned about the fact that given the flume map that this visually, this rezoning would basically create a residential parcel surrounded by industrial, because there's a lot of residential development going on along Page Road, and it makes sense just with how this area is developing. Which leads me to my second point, which tags onto what Commissioner Miller is raising, in that if you go along Page Road, so one, it's an auto-centric type area right now, but you're in close proximity. If you come out of that site, you go one direction to your right, if I'm correct, you can get to the grocery stores. There's multiple grocery stores to the right, and then if you go to the left, you're more in a commercial retail area with restaurants, et cetera, and more residential that's being developed. But what you'll notice is that given just like, it's not like a hodgepodge, it's just the incremental nature of the various developments that are coming along Page Road, is that one, residents don't naturally are attracted out to Page Road to say the walkability, et cetera, because there's not the connectivity going on right now, because a project has to come and the site and development plan has to have, the right of way for sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. And so it does create the question of, are there opportunities to create internal type elements to the programming of the site? You have up to 90 units going on, that creates more sustainability, in the sense of people still need to have that quality of life that prompts them to get outside, walk, even though they're going to have to get in their cars to go places. But as this area builds up, I think that as we're being asked to approve projects like this is an opportunity for us to, honestly, I agree with the residential being in this place, but there's nothing new. It's just a basic development. If you're asking me, we're just going to bring 90 more townhouses to this area of Durham, but what are we bringing additionally value add to these type plans, where we're changing a parcel that was originally deemed for industrial to now residential? And yes, we need housing units in Durham, but housing is just one part of how we create sustainable communities. And so what else are we adding so that we start setting the precedent, so that when applicants come and they want to make these changes, we're not just saying we're bringing 90 houses, 90 units that are slightly above the median housing prices, but given the nature of how development is happening in Durham, such as along Page Road, that we are creating a quality of life that's going to be realized sooner rather than later, in regards to us hoping that once all the development coming to in this area, that the connectivity is a part of the final puzzle that's put together. And so I'm kind of on the fence in the sense of, I think that I would like to see more in regards to what is actually going to be the overall picture for just this relatively small 20-acre site. But at the same time, I do agree that residential is probably more appropriate for what's happening along Page Road. So if my fellow commissioners have any additional thoughts or comments, I'd be happy to hear prior to me making a final decision here. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Johnson. Any other commissioners who would like to speak on this item? Comments or questions? Commissioner Amendolia?
Thank you, Chair. I just had a quick question for the applicant. I noticed that the development plan has the 100-year floodplain marked on it, and the site for the building kind of abuts right up against that. So I'm just curious what kind of mitigation measures you're considering for that. Since there's a 100-year floodplain there, it's surely the 500-year floodplain is further out. We know these maps are often not the most up to date, and so there could be flooding concerns down the road. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
So thank you for the question. So one thing I wanted to point out was that the stream feature itself is not, most of it, the large majority of it, is not within the rezoning area in the first place. However, it is a jurisdictional stream from which the buffers must be respected. So even though the stream is not on the property that is being rezoned, where the buffers, the regulatory buffers overlap with the area to be rezoned, we still have to respect that. And then beyond those buffers, Durham requires an additional 10-foot no-bill. So the stream itself will be adequately protected by the buffer and by the 10-foot no-bill.
Great, thank you. And so, well, I think unfortunately this makes me circle back to Commissioner Miller's point and question, is that I guess I'm a bit confused as where is this rezoning happening? Is it happening for the entire boundary shown on the aerial map in attachment 2, or is it only this northwestern corner shown on the development plan? And essentially what I'm asking is, can this portion of the development plan that has the stream in it, is it, if we approve this tonight, will it remain at an industrial land use, or will it also be changed to residential rural?
Wait, you're asking about the portion which is not part of the rezoning?
I'm clarifying what the rezoning is, because the boundaries between the aerial map and the development plan to me seem inconsistent. And I think Commissioner Miller tried to clarify this point, but I didn't quite catch it. So I just would like it spelled out for me.
I just wanted to be clear, because I think maybe I misunderstood what you were saying, Commissioner Amendolia, but none of the property currently is zoned industrial. It all is zoned rural residential. So the portion of the property which we are not rezoning would remain rural residential. It also would remain industrial on the plum, but that's because our application doesn't cover that area.
Yes, sorry. So the plum, so the portion of this map where the stream is at, that is currently industrial on the plum and would remain so in this case.
Yes, that's correct.
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Great. And I just have a clarifying question also for Mr. Cahill. In the presentation seemed to indicate that the applicant was offering a 29% tree save. And I just wanted to clarify, my interpretation of the development plan is that is up to 29%, based off of the ranges that they have provided, but they are not required, or they have not proffered the 29%. They have only required those ranges that allow for up to 29% tree save.
That's a correct reading. Their minimum requirement of 24, they're proposing up to 29, but they aren't committing themselves to it.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I think that answers all my questions. I think I might be making a game time decision on this one. Not really sure how I feel about it, but I appreciate y'all bearing with me and answering all my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Miller and Commissioner Johnson looking to speak again. I want to see if any other commissioners who haven't spoken yet would like to speak. Okay, Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question for staff, just confirming what I think is my understanding. We're not doing A cases anymore, are we? Because the statute's been changed that says that when you change a rezoning in a way that's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, that the comprehensive plan gets automatically amended. Is that correct? Or have I misunderstood?
That's correct. So staff then in turn will make a recommendation if the zoning is inconsistent for a consistent flow.
Right. And so when Mr. Amendolia was discussing with Mr. Ghosh how the flum would be if this rezoning went through, it would stay industrial. In fact, you're going to ask the city council to change the flum to low medium, right?
For the rezoned parcel? Correct.
Yes.
Low medium density residential is
right. In other words, so it won't stay industrial unless, of course, the city council decides that it should stay industrial, which would be unusual, but we've clipped the tie that we used to have in Article 3. So I suppose it would be possible, just undesirable. So it's not but the point I'm making is that if things go the way the staff is recommending, it will not be industrial if this rezoning is approved.
And maybe whoever asked that question can clarify, but I think what Amendolia was talking about was the portion that's not being rezoned, would that remain a flum of industrial, is how I understood it.
Okay.
We're only talking about the parcel, the shaded parcel and property.
All right, so
correct.
Thank you very much. To my fellow, as we sit here and we've talked about this, I'm a little concerned. We've got more than one planning commission member has said they've struggled to understand which property is actually being rezoned. And while we've spent some time during this hearing trying to sort that out, this is something that should have been clear when we got our packets. And I'm uncomfortable voting to rezone a parcel like this without a competent development plan at the time we vote. And so at the appropriate time, I'm going to ask that we delay this for 60 days so that it can be put right. And that when we vote on it, we know what we're sending forward. Because right now, I'm not sure I know. In other words, if I had a crayon, I'm not sure I could draw the boundaries of the property to be rezoned on the development plan that's now being displayed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that's kind of where I am with this.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you. So I think we're the three commissioners who've been asking these questions. I think we're honing in on the same thing here. So I guess this is for staffs. First is a clarifying question. So the parcel that is supposedly under consideration, along with the portion that has the stream buffer, is that from a parcel identification standpoint, one parcel, if you was to put the PID in a system, would that entire parcel come up, or would two parcels come up with two identification numbers to it?
So there's a couple of points or elements to what you're asking, and it's a great question. So my understanding is that what happened is the nature of this project changed at some point, and just a portion is being rezoned now of the larger parcel. So it's just the shaded part on the development plan that's being rezoned. This is all one parcel. The stream buffer and some of the stream buffer does go into the rezoning area, but most of the stream is not in the rezoned area.
So thank you. And so for this to happen, I guess I'm learning something that I guess I should have known or I knew, but didn't give much attention to because we don't see this that often. So you can request that a particular parcel have multiple or more than one rezoning classifications within that a particular boundary or footprint.
There's a lot to it, and maybe Grace wants to jump in, but you can either do you can do split zoning, so there could be multiple zoning types on a parcel, or in this case, it's just a portion of the parcel that they are proposing to rezone.
Okay.
That is correct. Grace Smith with the planning department. They don't have to. They're not required to rezone the entire parcel. They have chosen instead to pull out a portion that they want to rezone that happens to be on one side of the riparian area. And they can do that. We have a legal description of that area, and that is how the zoning ordinance would be adopted when it went to city council. Mm-hmm. It will be described by a legal description that matches the development plan in front of you.
Okay. And so if this request was the flume and the rezoning was to go and get full approvals, city county leadership. So the aftermath would be when you pull up this parcel, you would see the new request, the medium density, and then the portion that would remain rural residential right now, but on the flume it would be industrial, slated for industrial. That buffer piece.
Correct. The portion that they're asking to change would be changed, and the portion that's not part of the development plan request would not be changed.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Johnson. So Commissioner Miller and Commissioner Amendolia, I see you both raise your hand. Final comments, and then we can move to a motion. Commissioner Miller?
So again, I'm looking at the development plan. I'm looking at sheet 3. And it's still not perfectly clear to me exactly what the boundaries are of the property to be rezoned. We've talked about the shaded area, but the shaded area is the building and parking envelope, which is smaller than the area to be rezoned. And in fact, there are places designated outside the shaded area, which are obviously part of the development plan and for which there are commitments written on the development plan. And it all comes down to how the legend uses that blocky boundary thing, which goes around a whole bunch of parcels and even disappears off the edge of the map in places. This is my problem with this thing, that we do not have a development plan that's competent under our own UDO, because it doesn't describe correctly, fully, and without, I mean, look how much time we spent talking about it. And we're a bunch of pretty experienced and reasonably intelligent people. And it shouldn't require this discussion every time somebody folds this map out. I would like to have a map in front of us that when we vote, we know what we're doing. That doesn't require discussion every time we unroll a map, because I believe that if it's not changed, if it's not fixed, and I think it should be fixed, we also have text commitments that we want to see adjusted and changed. I'm uncomfortable saying that it'll include up to 90 townhouse units. I'm uncomfortable that it says that the tree save area could be up to 29%, which sounds like it's going to be more than the minimum, but what actually it is a commitment to not go over a certain point. It's a maximum. All of these things, in my opinion, could be cleaned up and made better. And I believe that when a development plan comes to us, it ought to at least express what the developer means completely. We may still disagree with it, but at least it ought to be understandable from the beginning. And this one it isn't really. And that's why I would like to delay it so it can be fixed.
Thanks, Commissioner Miller. I'm going to recognize Commissioner Amendolia, but then Commissioner Miller, I'm going to come back to you for your motion. Commissioner Amendolia?
Sure, and I'll be brief. I just have a quick question for Mr. Ghosh. And I just want to have you explain kind of the rationale behind only rezoning part of this parcel.
Sure. So there are a couple of reasons for that. And most of them have to do with the developability of this property. So in order to develop that backside of the property, a stream crossing would be required. Moreover, we have to think about utilities in this situation. There's no way to get the utilities across over there without crossing the stream. There's also the Duke power line easement. So there's a significant portion of that area that would be very expensive to cross and could only be crossed for a road. And furthermore, the city of Durham requires that utilities be within a public right-of-way. So you couldn't do like a separate utility crossing. It would have to be a road and utilities within that road to get to that backside. That would have created significant environmental impact, and the approvability of something like that is just totally unknown, because not only are you dealing with the stream crossing, you're also crossing over the overhead power line easement. So ultimately, the Duke will not permit the road crossing in the first place. So it's just not really feasible to develop this property, which is why the rezoning only covers a portion of the property.
Thank you. That helps a lot. I agree with Commissioner Miller that I would feel more comfortable having this delayed and getting an updated development plan. And I guess I'll just preview my concern for having only some of it be rezoned is, to me, the environmental feature with the floodplain on the eastern portion of this site. To me, that's the important thing to protect. And to me, I would like to see that also being included in the rural residential rezoning. And, I think I commend the developer for saying, first off, it's not feasible, but also there would be significant environmental impacts, and so we're not going to even try it. I agree with that. I definitely would have been a no vote if that had been the case. But I think my fear is seeing half of this site get sold and someone else trying to develop on that other portion, and on its face, I'm not sure if that's what we should be doing. So I just hope that gets addressed in the upcoming 60 days. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Amendolia. I don't see any other commissioners looking to speak, and we've had a pretty robust conversation. So Commissioner Miller, I'm going to recognize you to make your motion, and then if anyone would like to speak, we can do that as well once we have a second to the motion. Commissioner Miller?
Mr. Chair, at this time, I move that we continue our consideration of this case, and I won't recite the number, until our regularly scheduled meeting in February of 2021, to allow for time for the development plan to be cleaned up and brought to us in a complete form. And then I would leave it up to the developer also to use the time to make any discretionary changes that they might want to make to it, as well as fixing the shortcomings.
Mr. Miller, I'm sorry, there was some noise on my end. Did you say January or February? I wanted to make sure I got the correct? Okay, I'm
To the
sorry. Thank you.
to our regularly scheduled meeting on the second Tuesday of February, I believe,
That would be February the 9th. Mhm.
February the 9th.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
So a motion for a 2-cycle continuance until our regular February meeting by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Amendolia. I'm going to support this amendment. I also think we need to get things tightened up a little bit, and I hope in the next 60 days as well that there'll be some consideration to the comments that were made about the block length and open space features and some of the other items as well. Before we have our roll call vote, we have 2 hands raised. I did want to note, I think the hand that is raised that is not Mr. Ghosh, I think that may be Commissioner Williams, who had to be on the phone. So we may want to unmute her for the vote. And then Commissioner Ghosh, I do want to give you, before we have the vote, give you a moment to make any brief remarks, and then we'll move to the vote.
Thank you. You put me back on the planning commission. It's no longer Commissioner Ghosh, but I appreciate the recognition. No, I just wanted to say that I understand what you're saying. We think the development plan is adequate as is, but no doubt it could be clearer. It seems pretty obvious that I think most commissioners here would support a delay. But I just wanted to state we believe we can get the changes to the development plan done with only a 30-day delay. So I would ask for that if you'd be amenable to that.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh, former Commissioner Ghosh. Commissioner Miller, well, first let me ask the staff, Ms. Smith, is that, if a 30-day continuance, does that work from the staff perspective?
That would be January the 12th. They would really have about 2 weeks to do all of the changes that need to be done before we send everything out. If they're confident they can do that, I mean, they're relatively not difficult changes, but it's really only a 2-week window. It's not a month. So,
okay. Mr. Ghosh, 2 weeks, does that work from your perspective?
That is what our consultants are telling me. So yes.
Okay. And Commissioner Miller, you made the motion, and you are welcome to amend your motion if you would like.
If Austin will join me, I'm happy to move it to our regularly scheduled meeting in January, and Grace will tell us that date.
January 12th.
I'm happy to have it on January 12th. I just knew that with the holidays, I did not want to crowd the staff's inbox.
No, second that.
Great. Thank you both. So we've got a revised motion of a 1-cycle continuance to our January 12th meeting. The applicant and the staff have said that is doable. And so we will have a roll call vote on the motion, please.
I would like to state for the record that if we continue any other items tonight, not to continue them to January, this will actually put us at capacity. So, because we have another case that's coming back to January from last month. So just putting that out there. So I'm going to go through the vote quickly. Amendolia?
Here.
Yes.
Or sorry, yes, sorry.
Baker?
Yes.
Busby?
Yes.
Cameron?
Yes.
Durkin?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kenchin?
Yes.
I don't believe Commissioner Lowe ever joined. McIver?
Yes.
Morgan?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Williams? You may have to unmute Commissioner Williams, Chris, our liaison, tech liaison.
If that's her on the phone, she'll need to press *6 to do so.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Williams, will you press *6, please, if you're on the phone?
My vote is yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the motion carries unanimous, 11-0. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Ghosh and team, we will see you in January and look forward to seeing the revised plan.
Thank you.
We will move to our next item. This is 1000 Hazel Street. It's case Z2000027. And coming out of this case, it just depending on timing, if this is takes a little while, we will take our first 10-minute break coming out of this case. But we will start with the staff report, please.
Thank you very much, Michael Stock with the Planning Department. My cohort, Chris, will be running the PowerPoint, so I don't cut out on you folks while you see the magic in front of you. Case Z2000027 is a zoning map change for 1000 Hazel Street. Chris, can you go to it? The agent is Daniel Jewell of Culture Jewel Thames. The location is 1000 Hazel Street and 700 Canal Street. It's in the city. It's a block that's approximately 1 acre in size in the urban tier, currently zoned light or industrial light. The request is for residential urban 5-2 with a text-only development plan, and the current FLUM is industrial. So here's your second industrial FLUM site. The staff recommended FLUM designation would be medium density residential. The proposal, the tenant would be for single and two-family residential. The current use is actually a single-family residence. There was a minor special use permit approved recently to reconstruct that residence. There's the aerial photo. For context, it is, and if we can go to the next slide, site photos showing it's primarily a vacant site. With residential surrounding it on the north and west sides. There is industrial to the south side, and there's actually railroad to the east. If we can go to the next slide. East with a park actually across the way from the railroad. And you can see this is the zoning context. The rezoning request would be consistent with the zoning surrounding it to the on all cardinal directions except which is industrial. Next slide, please. And there's a future land use. Again, the future land use designation or the recommended future land use designation would be that which is consistent with the residential area to the all to the north and west of the site. The area to the east is that park that by reference, and to the south it is flummed industrial. Again, the text commitment is to limit the development of the site to single family and two family or duplex development. Except for the FLUM designation, staff found that it was consistent with all the comprehensive plan policies. You can go to the next slide too, and to the final slide. And that, again, we found that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan except for the FLUM, and the recommendation would be for medium density residential, which would be consistent with the neighborhood to the north and west. Staff will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We will move to open the public hearing, and we have two individuals who are proponents for this case who have signed up to speak. Aaron Lubeck and Dan Jewell. So I will hand it to the applicants and let you make your remarks.
Thank you, Chair Busmeet. This is Dan Jewell. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Good evening, and good evening, commissioners. My name is Dan Jewell with Culture Jewel Thames. Aaron Lubeck is with me. He's also helping the property owner. He will help me answer questions if necessary. I'll keep this very brief. We've been asked by the property owner, Copernica Development, to request a rezoning of this property from industrial, which has been for many, many years, for some reason, to a zoning designation, which is consistent with the neighborhood. As you saw in the presentation that Michael did, it's a very oddly shaped piece of property. It's like the sore thumb that sticks up above Mallard along the railroad tracks, along Hazel Street, with a little bit of industrial, but very anomalous to the surrounding neighborhood. The future land use map for the properties west, north, and east are all medium density residential, and the zoning for all the properties to the west, north, and east are medium density residential. Further, This property, roughly a quarter of it, is encumbered by stream buffer. The northern portion of the site has a jurisdictional stream on it with stream buffer. And if you're not familiar with the location, the railroad track is actually still active. There's, I think, a cement plant and one other user about a half-mile north. So trains do trundle by here several times a week. But we think a residential rezoning on this site fits much better than the current industrial. As Mr. Stock said, there was an old house on the site for years and years, which literally was caving in. The property owner took it down because it was a hazard and has come in with a request to build that one house back. As Mr. Stock said, we are limiting the uses through the text commitment to only single family or duplex homes, which is exactly what's in the surrounding neighborhood. We held a virtual neighborhood meeting back in October. 3 neighbors attended and asked a few questions about what we had proposed. Several of them asked if there was a chance that we would do townhomes, and we said no. We're committing to single family and duplex units. So we feel this site is much more compatible to the neighborhood. It is not a good industrial site. Again, if you've been out there, it's not only too small, but the proximity to the railroad tracks, where that normally would say railroad frontage. If you've been out there, you'll know the tracks are 10 to 15 feet higher than this property is. So there's no way you would ever get railroad access to that. So again, we would appreciate your consideration of our request, and are here to answer any questions or give further information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. And I see one other hand raised. I will call on you in case you would like to speak during this public hearing. Ian Kipp.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Just I'm checking in because I own a property nearby, and I was noticed and I was invited to the meeting. But I also sit on the Board of Adjustment, and I just wanted to understand the rationale for the developer bringing the request for a 2-story home on what was the single family home on the site. Because I just want to understand what the purpose of going to the Board of Adjustment was, because there's a lot of information being shared with the Planning Commission here that wasn't shared with the Board of Adjustment, and I'm just a little bit confused.
And thank you, Mr. Kipp. And if you don't mind giving us your address for the record as well.
Sure. I live at 100 West Markham Avenue in Durham, 27701.
Great, thank you. I'm going to just see if anyone else would like to speak during the public hearing, but that may be something that we can ask the staff to address, or Mr. Jewell as appropriate. But thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item during the public hearing tonight? Okay, I do not see anyone else, so we will close the public hearing. And commissioners, we will come back to you, but as we do that, Mr. Stock, I don't know if there's anything you would like to note regarding the question that Mr. Kipp had.
I think that's something that's more appropriate for the applicant to respond to. I can't speak to why they would go for a Board of Adjustment approval for the house coinciding with the rezoning request.
Yeah, Mr. Jewell, if you have any comments, that'd be helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, the property owner is moving forward with a request for a house right now because the previous planning director determined that even though the old house was taken down because of the condition as it in, that a new house could be built roughly in the same footprint that is on. The reason that they are going to the Board of Adjustment, in my understanding, is that the height of that house is a little bit taller than allowed in the current zoning district. So that is the reason, as I understand it. The property owner is not here with me this evening. I could ask him, maybe get a little information, but it's you know, that is a separate application, and I appreciate Mr. Kipp looking after that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Jewell.
Mhm.
I will recognize Commissioner Miller, who's raised his hand to speak on the proposal.
Thank you very much. I'm interested in this proposal. But I'm very interested to learn that there's a Board of Adjustment case, and it appears that the Board of Adjustment case is a request for a variance on height. And so for RU5 and RU52, I believe the base height requirement is 35 feet, which would be tall enough to build a two-story house even with a peaked roof. I'm assuming that it must be, I did drive over there, and I can't remember the context well enough. Is it possible that infill standards impose a slightly lower limit because of one-story houses in the block face or something like that? It seems to me, and has the Board of Adjustment already decided the case? Seems to me that would be a legacy thing that I would kind of want to know when we move forward, because it does affect what can be built on the land. But I'm going to set all that aside, and maybe Mr. Drew, somebody can respond to that. But as I read the application, I saw that up to 11 duplexes could be built on the property. And so this is a question for Mr. Jewell. It seems to me, as I look at this piece of property, and it's my understanding of the minimum lot sizes for RU5 and RU52, the only way you could do that here would be to take advantage of some of the provisions in the expanding housing choices changes to the UDO. Is that correct?
That is actually, we did a test fit for our own purposes to figure out how many lots meeting the RU52 zoning we could get on this property. We then made an assumption that if each of those lots could have 2 units on it, 2 duplex units, that's how we came up with 10 to 12. And the reason we put that in the application is we wanted to sort of give a high range for what could be built on the site, because as you know, those numbers are used to determine whether a traffic impact analysis is needed, whether there's adequate water and sewer capacity, things of that nature. So that's sort of our high estimate of what might be built on this property. So that wouldn't be, just to be clear, that wouldn't be 22 units, that would be 11 units, not.
That would be 11 units, not 11 buildings.
Correct.
Oh, that's
yeah.
Because that's when somebody says duplex to me, I see one building with 2 units. That's the picture that pops into my head.
Yes, I would be the most amazing land planner in Durham if I could get 22 units on there.
Yes, I was wondering about that. But I thought, well, maybe he's worked it out so that he's got 25-foot lots. In which case that would be, that would be the small houses, small lots thing, and it would become very interesting. As far as I know, that would be the test case for that new capability. So thank you. That really helps. This is a question for staff. The text commitment says it's going to be single family houses or duplexes. On this lot, if it were RU52, what other housing type could you build there?
There is, and I haven't looked into it specifically, but there is potential for townhouses in the RU52.
Right, but this isn't one of those places, is it?
RU52 is always allowed for townhouses. So
but I thought it was only under certain circumstances.
There might be under certain circumstances, but I don't want to rule out those what those circumstances would be. I'm just providing the broadest range of possibilities. There's also a number of non-residential uses that could be requested either through the Board of Adjustment or by right.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
So the text commitment does have meaning.
Absolutely, it does.
All right, thank you very much. And so finally, this is a request to the staff and the developer. I'm going to vote for this because I agree that having this piece of property zoned industrial is a bad idea. It's a bad idea for the neighborhood. I will say this, if that's an active railroad line, and I believe that I knew that it was. It's going to be that's very close to the railroad tracks, but I don't see any other practical use for the property that is good for the neighborhood, so I'm going to vote for this. I do request this, however, the text commitment, as it appears in the application, is a fragment of a sentence. And I believe that when we do text commitment development plans, our text commitment should be complete sentences. I believe it makes it easier to understand than the fragment. And then this is a request to staff that when we have staff reports for text commitments, that we actually set aside a place in the report where we have the exact text commitment written out as a quote. Now, in this case, I know the staff report does have the exact language, but I couldn't tell whether it was the staff's summary of the text commitment or the text commitment itself, the way it was written. And it would just make it a little bit easier for me. I'm a big proponent of text-only commitment development plans, and when they come across, I really like to kind of dig into them. Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, I'm going to vote for this because I believe it is the best thing for this, and it's the only sensible, if it's not going to be industrial, which it should not, the only sensible zone for it would be RU5 or RU52, because that's what the rest of the neighborhood is.
And Commissioner Miller, first of all, I agree. Second of all, no other commissioners have raised their hands, so I'm going to just let you make your motion.
If I may then, Mr. Chairman, with regard to case Z2000027 concerning the property at 1000 Hazel Street, I move that we send this case forward to the City Council with a favorable recommendation. And so in this new world where we don't have A cases, is it appropriate for the Planning Commission to also include in its motion a recommendation to the elected officials that they adopt the staff recommendation with regard to the change in the flume? Is that an appropriate addition to a motion?
I think that would be great. Thank you for bringing that up. I think you can put in your motion that the commission concurs with the staff recommendation for the flume.
So that's my motion, Mr. Chair.
Great motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Will the roll call vote, please?
Amendolia,
No.
Baker,
Yes.
Busby,
Yes.
Cameron,
Yes.
Durkin. Was that yes? I'm sorry. Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Johnson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kenchin,
Yes.
Lanford is absent, Lowe is absent. McIver,
Yes.
Miller? Miller,
Yes.
okay. Morgan
Yes.
and Williams.
Yes.
It passes 10-1.
Thank you. We are going to move to our next case. We moved pretty quickly through that case, and we've got time before our break. So we will move to case Z1900029. This is the NCCU School of Business. Before we get started, I do want to recognize both Commissioner Johnson and then Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Johnson?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just going to request to be recused from this case due to working relationship with the applicant. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Commissioner Williams?
Yes, I'm going to request to be recused from this case due to an active relationship with the applicant.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you asking for recusals given your connections to the applicant, and I would request a motion to recuse the Commissioners Johnson and Williams from this case.
So moved.
Second. Commissioner Durkin moved. I missed who seconded.
Baker.
Thank you. And we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Before we vote, Mr. Chair, may I make a comment?
You may.
So the rules are pretty strict on this. One, the only grounds for recusal are owning property within the notice radius or having a financial interest in the outcome of the case. And having a relationship with North Carolina Central University alone isn't enough unless it is has a financial component.
And that's a good point. In what I've heard from both Commissioner Johnson and Williams, it is both financial connection.
Well, under those circumstances, I'll support the motion.
Great, thank you. We'll have the roll call vote.
Amendolia. Commissioner Amendolia.
We lost him.
Yeah, I don't see him.
I see his name. Okay, I'll come back. Commissioner Baker.
Yes.
Chair Busby.
Yes.
Cameron.
Yes.
Durkin. Kinchin.
Yes.
McIver.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
And I'm circling back to Amendolia. Are you on the line?
Looks like he's connecting to audio.
Yeah, I think he's connecting. Yeah. Commissioner Amendolia, we were taking a vote to recuse Commissioners Williams and Johnson from this case. Are you able to unmute and vote?
Yes, I apologize. I got disconnected.
That's okay.
And I'm a yes vote.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Commissioners Johnson and Williams, we will bring you back after this case and we will start with the staff report for this item.
Thank you very much. Michael Stock again with the Planning Department. This is a case brought to you for the NCCU School of Business site. Next page, please. The agent is Eric Davis of Surface 678. Location is our 19 parcels at the intersection of East Lawson, South Austin, and Dupree Streets, so South Austin Avenue and Dupree Streets. It is in the city. It's approximately 4.5 acres within the urban tier. The existing zoning is RU5 and RU5-2, and the request is to go to the UC2 district with a development plan. The current FLUM is medium density residential, and this would be a staff recommended change if the zoning is approved to institutional. The proposal is for obviously a university facility, and more specifically, as indicated by the applicant, the School of Business. I believe the planning commissioners have received a revised development plan from an email from Grace. I will show that. Pull that up in a minute after the presentation. It just really involves pulling the zoning line back from two parcels that were recently created by the tax office, and it was just a correction for that. But there you can see the site. It is just on the north side and west of existing NCCU campus facilities. Next slide, please. There are some photos of the site. From South Austin Avenue, from Dupree Street, and from Lawson Street. There are residential structures still on the site, but I do believe, and the applicant can confirm, that most of the properties have been purchased by NCCU at this point. Next slide, please. Zoning context area, as you can see, the campus and institutional site, UC district is already in place to the west and south. And this would fill out that block to Alston Avenue. Next slide. And then the future land use would be proposing for a institutional designation consistent with the campus. And there are two key text commitments providing and these are summary, they're found on the development plan. There is an access point on Dupree Street and to provide the full movement access onto Dupree. And also to provide a concrete pad and bench on East Lawson per Go Durham specifications. The graphic commitments, it would the location of the tree coverage areas, site access points, the project boundary buffers, building and parking envelopes. All the building envelope is located outside of the transitional use area of the UC district. Maximum impervious surface has been identified and committed to, and also maximum floor area. And there's the proposed site conditions. And as you can see, to the west side of the site that's kind of bubbled, and you see all the trees kind of pointed to, you can see, and I'll try to, hopefully you can see there's a narrow strip of land on the west side, on the western side of that bubble. Those were originally, yes, in that area. Exactly. Those are two slim parcels that were created by the tax office in August, unbeknownst to staff and to the applicant. And those were in the original, thank you. Oh, that's awesome. In the original application. And we discovered it as we were looking at the context map. We were kind of scratching our heads what's going on with that. And they had to just pull that line back. So there is a buffer. They are actually not including those two within there. The development plan should be indicating that there is a transitional use area off of that property boundary line. There is a buffer shown off of that property boundary line, and that's also where they're showing the tree coverage, required tree coverage areas. As you can see, part of the requirements for requesting the UC district is for sites that show up on master plan. This is an excerpt from their 2017 master plan update, and you can see that that site is designated on their master plan. Next slide. Tree coverage, they are committing to double the minimum requirement tree coverage, and they're actually looking to, the minimum requirement is just 3% tree coverage. It could be tree preservation and or tree replacement. They are committing to approximately 6.6% preservation on the site. And again, it meets the comprehensive plan policies except for the FLUM, and staff would recommend institutional consistent with the rest of the NCCU university campus. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stock. We have a number of individuals who've signed up. It appears most of them are part of the applicant team. So I'm just going to read through the names and we can confirm who would like to speak on behalf of the applicant team. We have Eric Davis, Dave Harden, Johann Kettler, Deidre McIntyre, Onden, Mikelsescu, sorry about that, Zach Abaguerin, James Griffin, and Jeff Israel. And then Victor Vines is also signed up. Victor, I'm not sure, I see you're with us. I'm not sure if you're part of the applicant team or not, but if someone with the applicant team would like to kick off their comments, and if you can let us know who's with the team, and then we can call off whoever's left to speak as well, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely. Good evening, Chair Busby. This is Eric Davis, Surface 678, Vice President and Principal. My home address is 506 Rock Garden Road, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I want to say thank you to Vice Chair as well, Kenshin, and all the members of the Planning Commission for taking time to review this rezoning application. Members of North Carolina Central are here that you've listed as well, Chair Busby, as well as members from Surface 678, that would be Jeff Israel. And then, yes, we have Vines Architecture as part of our design team. That would be Dave Harden and Victor Vines. Mr. Stock gave a high-level review of our project, and we are available for questions as you go through your review process. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And again, I want to give anyone who would like to speak, who hasn't spoken on this item, the ability, you can raise your hand and we will call on you during the public comment period. No one is asked to speak, so at this point we will close the public hearing, and Commissioner Miller, you have raised your hand. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question for Mr. Davis. So when I look at this development plan, I see the business school there and a building envelope for that. But when I look at the master plan, it looks like more than one building is contemplated in the master plan for this site. So do you intend in the future to add buildings to the site that's now under consideration?
Mr. Miller, I will respond and then turn it over to NC Central for further clarification. At this time, there is no intention to add an additional building that I'm aware of to the site, but I would like to have NC Central respond to that, sir. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is on Deannexation. I don't know if you can hear me. All right. I am the Director of Planning, Design, and Construction at North Carolina Central University. And that part is part of the master plan. And the university will look at that area to see how it's going to be developed in the future.
So thank you for that. And this is a follow-up question for the staff. If this development plan is approved as we see it now, the only place buildings may go on this site until it might be rezoned again in the future is inside that building envelope. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the limit on the size of the building is 28,000 square feet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. I just wanted to make sure I understood it. And while I've got your attention, we don't get to play with UC zoning very often. There's two categories. This is UC2, which if I understand it, if I remember correctly, is the preferred university college zone for public institutions. Does this have a transitional use area? And if it does, how does it work?
It does. UC2 was developed for NCCU as a separate district. You're correct. On the development plan, and if we can pull up that slide for the development plan, hopefully the slide will show it. There we go. The TUA area is a 75-foot depth area that starts in the midpoint of the right-of-way along South Austin Street and then also along Dupree Street and measures inward towards the site for 75 feet. The building envelope hugs the boundary of the TUA area, but is shown to be out of it.
And so what can happen in the TUA area, Michael?
You can build within it, but you have additional limitations as to how you build in it. There's height limitations, there's additional requirements. It's much freer when you're quote unquote in the internal campus part to build. The maximum height is 120 feet in the internal campus, and I believe it's 75 feet. I could be, I'm going off of memory, so I might be a little bit wrong, but it's a lower height per se, for an example, in the TUA.
Thank you very much. Back to the North Carolina Central folks. So if I understand it correctly, along Dupree Street, there you intend to have a 20-foot wide, 60% opacity buffer. Is that correct?
This is on Deannexation again, and I will defer to the designer to answer on that, but I would say yes.
This is Eric Davis with Surface 678. That is correct. That opacity is correct.
And that will run from I'm assuming from the tree save area on the west along Dupree all the way up at least to a reasonable point on the corner. I'm assuming that there's a point in there where sight distances have to be reserved for turning automobiles.
That is correct. Exactly. That is how we would run that opacity along that edge. And we're looking at an evergreen buffer along Dupree Street. Mr. Miller.
And right now you have a number of residences in there that in some of them are in very good condition, and I noticed one seems to have suffered a devastating fire. And then you have an access point that will go through the buffer.
Yes, Mr. Miller will go through the buffer and provide access to 19 parking spaces, 2 of which will be accessible parking spaces. And the nice thing about the location of this parking area is that not only does it have the evergreen buffer, but it also has the opportunity to take advantage of the grade condition. So this parking is recessed along this edge.
And I noticed that I was there. If I'm not mistaken, the property is level for a little bit on the south side of Dupree Street, but then it falls away.
Yes, exactly. And how we leverage that to take advantage of creating a better streetscape for pedestrians is important. And that's why we are using that topography to sort of begin to think about how we can diminish the impact of that parking area along Dupree Street and maintain a strong pedestrian feeling along that streetscape.
Well, my principal interest in this whole thing is I want to accommodate North Carolina Central University as nearly as we can, but I also want to make sure that the historically African-American neighborhood to the north of it remains a desirable and viable place for people to live long into the future. And so this is the one chance we have to make sure that the building that we build on this site is not something that negatively impacts the possibility of that neighborhood continuing for a long time. How tall will this building be?
Right now, we are looking at a 3-story building, 48 to 70 foot height, depending on grades. But Mr. Miller, I would like to defer to Mr. Harden or Mr. Vines to discuss the building in greater detail.
All right, thank you.
Hi, this is Dave Harden with Vines Architecture. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. As Mr. Davis said, that's correct. We're looking at a 3-story building in this area now to both align with the programming requirements and also align with the campus environment and the campus building footprints of density.
So let me ask you this. I'm assuming, well, I won't assume. Will it be 3? So I'm looking at the portion of the building envelope that's right up against the transitional use area along Dupree Street. Will the building be 3 stories tall there, or will it take advantage of the slope that the descending topography from Dupree to Lawson and be shorter there and then reach its full 3-story height at the Lawson Street face? Or will it be taller on Lawson?
Primarily be 3 stories at the Alston face along the parallel with Alston. Then as the grades recede towards the west, it would open up the possibility of 2 lower floors that will be used for mechanical spaces or spaces that don't need a lot of natural light. Okay,
that's very helpful. It helps me understand. And so I put this to the applicants, whoever might answer this. In the UC2 zone, we allow actually very tall heights. Heights that, in my opinion, even with a transitional use area and even with the buffer that you have planned, would be inappropriate for the neighborhood across Dupree Street. Would you be willing to include in your commitments a height limitation that would allow you to build the building that you contemplate, but that would make sure that, at least as it references those homes along the north side of Dupree, would be happier in scale? In other words, if you're 3 stories there, and let's say you've got 18-foot stories for this institutional use, would you agree to a height limit there, at least along that face of the building, of 60 feet?
Let's see, looking at what we are currently working on, I would say that would be in compliance with what we were proposing to the university. And the idea also with the shape of this development area is that we have the shortest width of face towards the neighborhood, and that the prominent faces of the building would follow along Alston Avenue and Lawson Avenue.
I noticed that, and I appreciate it.
Sure. And so if I would need to confer with the university that they would want to put that text commitment in the development plan to limit the face on the Dupree side to be within 60 feet or less.
I would very much like to see that added in. I'm not going to make it a condition of my yes vote tonight, but if you will promise me that you will give it your serious consideration as this case moves forward from the Planning Commission to the City Council. I'm very concerned about the relationship of North Carolina Central University and its the residential neighborhoods that surround it. I recognize and support the desire of the university to grow in its current location, but I also want to make sure that as it does that, that we finish up with a happy relationship between the university and its residential context. And I believe that's in the university's interest as well.
Yes, from the design side, I completely agree with that, and we were very sensitive about that from the beginning, being on the northeast edge of campus at the residential front door, essentially. And so we were had a successful meeting with user groups in the area with adjacent neighbors, and had a pretty successful review and comments from the neighborhood when proposing this project. So that I can definitely attest to say that the university remains committed to their neighbors in all directions, and trying to keep the neighborhood in mind when making these sort of development decisions.
So, Mr. Chairman, those are my questions answered, and I'll turn the microphone back over to you.
Thank you. I do not see any other commissioners who have raised their hand to ask questions or make comments. I'll give you one more moment. I'll note I plan to support this project. I think Commissioner Miller, I appreciate the concern you raised, and because I agree, and I'm satisfied with the answer as well. So I plan to vote yes. Seeing no one else asking to speak, I'll look for a motion.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, then with regard to case Z2000029 concerning the site for the North Carolina Central University School of Business, I move that we send this forward to the City Council with a favorable recommendation. And remind me, is this?
With a recommended flume designation of institution.
Yes, that too.
I was reading your mind, Commissioner Miller, or reading your face.
Brave new world of making motions, Commissioner Miller. That is an appropriate motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
The second I will give to Commissioner Cameron, and we will have the roll call vote, please.
Okay. Amendola.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Busby.
Yes.
Cameron.
Yes.
Durkin.
Yes.
Kinchin.
Yes.
MacIver.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
With passes unanimous 9-0.
Thank you very much. We're going to
Thank you, commissioners.
In just a moment. So I just want to let folks know, again, this is a reminder that for the closed captioning staff has asked that every 2 hours or so, we take a 10-minute break. Before we do that, we have a couple minutes before we hit the 2 hours. Could we get a motion to officially excuse Commissioners Landfree and Lowe at this point?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller moved, Commissioner Baker seconded, and we'll have a roll call vote, and we've got Commissioners Johnson and Williams back with us for this vote.
Sorry, I had to regroup from a, I need to know the motion in the second again. I'm sorry.
No problem. This was to excuse Commissioners.
I got the motion. I'm sorry. The first and the second. I apologize.
No problem. Miller and Baker.
Okay. And Mendolia.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Busby.
Yes.
Cameron.
Yes.
Durkin. Johnson.
Yes.
Kinchin.
Yes.
McIver.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Thank you.
I note that despite their recusals, a couple of commission members voted who shouldn't have.
No, this
strike
is
that.
on the,
Yeah,
they're
we moved on. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I need a break too. 10 minutes.
Me too. Yeah, don't confuse me, please.
All right, so it's 7:20. We'll be back in exactly 10 minutes, and we will continue for the rest of our items. So we'll see you in 10. Welcome back. If you are here, if you can sign back on so we can know if we've got a quorum. All right. I think we're looking good. If we are ready to go, we can move to our next case. And that is case Z2000026A, the Terry Road de-annexation. And we can start with the staff report.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm going to share my screen. Oops. I think I'm on the wrong slide. Okay. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Grace Smith with the Planning Department. I will be presenting case Z2000026A, the Terry Road de-annexation zoning map change. The case summary is the location is 1230 and 1236 Terry Road and 1620 Scally Park Road. It's a county jurisdiction case. This area was formerly in the city limits, but it has been de-annexed by the North Carolina General Assembly. So this is a county case. The site acreage is 114 acres, roughly, a little bit over that. The development tiers are suburban and rural. The existing zoning is planned development residential 2.500. The proposed zoning is rural residential. The FLUM designation is, it's actually in two categories, rural residential and very low density residential. So the overview for this case, as I stated in the memo that I sent out, this is a fairly not routine, obviously, situation. It's a different situation that we've found ourselves in. The site in question was de-annexed by the North Carolina General Assembly in 2019, effective June 30th, 2020. The current development plan for the site is P03-37, is a PDR 2.500 or 00, which is a city zoning designation. Again, this was a formerly annexed satellite area. The site cannot be built out as approved at that zoning due to the absence of municipal water and sewer services. As such, the staff recommends a county zoning designation of rural residential, which is the least intense designation that is consistent with the future land use map. Here's an aerial that shows the property, and the Terry Road splits the property. The tract is comprised of three parcels that are situated on both sides of Terry Road. Here's the zoning context map. It's currently PDR. We are proposing a rural residential zone. And here is the future land use map, where you can see where the tier splits the property with the purple line that's kind of curvy that goes through the site here. That's the rural tier and the suburban tier. Available for any questions, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We will move to the public hearing, and we have 5 individuals who signed up in advance. And I'll start with Patrick Biker, who I know is representing the applicant. And Mr. Biker, if you can let us know if there are others with you, and then I can read through the remainder of the individuals who've signed up.
Sure. Chairman Busby, if you'd be so kind as to share those names, I can give you that answer right quick.
Sure. Roger Sparks, Raven Bow, Walter Vielle, and Marie Bumpus.
I think just Walter is on our team. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with the other folks who are who signed up. I'm again Patrick Biker with Morningstar Law Group, representing the property owner Highland Park. I've only been involved with this 114 acres over the last year or so when they retained Morningstar Law Group to help with the deannexation. We brought that to the City Council and to the General Assembly. I do want to thank on the record Senators Woodard and McKissick for sponsoring this deannexation that was duly approved, and we look forward to developing the property in accordance with the RR zoning district. Other than that, I really don't have anything to add. I was not involved with the legacy case that Assistant Director Smith referred to. And I also want to thank her very much for an excellent staff report for all of her hard work on this item. So happy to answer any questions over the last year or so of my involvement. We appreciate your time, and we respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Biker. So I'll call through the other individuals. Roger Sparks, and Roger, I see you are with us, and so if we'll make sure we get you unmuted, and please give us your name, your address, and your remarks, please. And Chris, I don't know if we can help Mr. Sparks come off of mute.
I've submitted a request to unmute. That's all I can do.
Okay.
Chair Busby, I would like to add, I did speak with one of the people that you mentioned was signed up. I emailed with this Ms. Bumpus earlier today, and I believe she was going to listen in. I'm not sure if she did not mention that she would like to speak, but she may raise her hand, but she said she was going to just listen in on the call.
Okay, thank you. While we wait for Mr. Sparks to be able to get unmuted, I see Eric Smith has their hand raised, and if you would like to speak in this item, the floor is yours.
I'd like to thank the commissioners for inviting us. We were noticed on this. I just have 2 or 3 questions. We live on the Cotherstone Street extension. If you look at the map, that's just south of the end of Genesee. And Genesee dead ends into this property that's going to be developed. So my questions are, because of the deannexation, what are the plans for water and sewer for the new development? Is going to be independent, a community well and septic system, or are they going to have individual? That's concerning to me because there's an easement on our property that goes right down our driveway at a time where the city would have brought water and sewer out. So we're concerned about that. And the other one is, will Genesee be extended through connecting to this neighborhood, making Bramble off of Guess onto Genesee and into this neighborhood a major thoroughfare then for what was an otherwise quiet street, dead ending? And then the other one is, ever since they forested the property, when it rains, the runoff is substantial. It all runs downhill from the mountain across Terry Road, over that forested property, and then down Genesee to the extent of it fills the ditches and actually covers the road surface. This is evidenced by the debris around my mailbox. So I'd like to know if there's any plans or what the plans are about that. You may not be able to speak to that tonight, but it's a concern I'd like to have on the record. And thanks for the time. Thank you. And we'll see if we can get some of those questions answered as we wrap up the public hearing and continue the discussion. Mr. Sparks, are you able to come off of mute at this point?
Yes, I am, and I want to thank you for allowing me to join your meeting. The basic question I have is at the Scaly Bark dead end carry through. What I am mostly concerned about is the stormwater sewer and not sewer, but stormwater direction being given toward Terry Road, or is it going to be moving towards Scaly Bark, the existing?
Right now it's moving towards Genesee.
Great, thank you. We will, Raven Bow, are you with us this evening? I don't see that, so we'll call on Ryan Fulgham, who has their hand raised.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ryan Fulgham. My wife is Raven Boo, or Raven Bow. We just bought a home in June here on Cotherstone, So the backyard of our property butts up right against this property. So we're interested in whatever development is going on here and being privy to this information. And I just want, if I could ask a question, to kind of clarify a point from the the documents that you guys shared, that there was a neighborhood meeting held by TMTLA Associates on November 10th of this year, and I never received any notice of any meeting of that sort. So I presume that I would be considered a stakeholder as a neighboring the property, but maybe that's a false assumption. But anyway, they were discussing a conservation subdivision for this property, and I really don't know anything about that. And I would like to understand a bit about that meeting and a bit about what was discussed, and maybe if there are going to be future meetings, if I could be involved in that as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? So I don't see anyone else. Mr. Biker, you have additional time if you would like during the public hearing to respond to any of the questions that were posed, but we can also ask you those as we close the public hearing. I'm fine either way.
Sure, happy to address a few of those issues, Chairman Busby. Taking them perhaps in reverse order, there was a Pam Porter with TMTLA did host a neighborhood meeting in regard to a conservation subdivision. That is an administrative approval from the Plan Department in the RR District. And our plan right now, I believe, is for approximately 80 lots within these 114 acres. So that's really the long story short of that. It's an administrative approval through the Plan Department. I do want to stress that all stormwater infrastructure and Terry Road will be upgraded to current standards, and that is standards have changed quite a bit from when most of the surrounding development happened in this part of North Durham. So I do want to stress that we'll have to work with NCDOT in regards to the road construction and the maintenance standard that NCDOT will hold this development to, in addition to, of course, the current Durham County stormwater standards that'll have to be approved, which ensure that there is no additional runoff from this property beyond current conditions. I do want to stress that the property was timbered several years ago. I don't know exactly when, but that was 1 or 2 property owners ago, so I don't have any firsthand information about when that happened and so on, but I do believe it was several years ago. And so I do want to stress that this conservation subdivision will meet all current UDO standards, and this will be, my knowledge, one of the newer residential subdivisions in North Durham. There hasn't been a whole lot of residential activity up there, so that's what we're moving forward with, and it will be, of course, on well and septic, since it was cost prohibitive to extend water and sewer over so many miles to reach this site. That again was zoned back in 2003, when I think all of us were more bullish on development happening in North Durham than what actually transpired over the last 20 years. So I hope that answers all the questions. Again, we respectfully ask for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Biker. So I still don't see anyone else asking to speak, so we will close the public hearing and we'll take it back to the commissioners. Commissioner Durkin, we'll start with you.
Sure. I have a question for Patrick Biker. For my edification, and it sounds like for the neighbors as well, can you explain what a conservation subdivision is and what the goals of it are?
Sure. It's thanks, Commissioner Durkin. It's to preserve half of the property in a common area and have only half of the area. So out of 115 acres, 114 acres, math is always scary at this time of night. What is that? About 60 acres would be in common area, and about 60 acres would be in the residential lots. So we preserve the sensitive areas and the areas that are important to preserve in perpetuity. So I'm sorry I didn't touch on that point. I apologize for that oversight.
No, that's fine. And would there be some kind of easement or something recorded in the record that would be in perpetuity so that it couldn't be developed?
Yeah, it'd be the plat. Yes, yes, it'd be the conservation plat. That is correct.
And by common area, you mean open space, undeveloped. So if there are tree areas, or the idea is to preserve the natural area as it currently exists?
Correct. On the whole, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. And I wanted to just make sure, I'm not sure that you touched on whether Genesee would be extended through that street.
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. It would be whatever is in accordance with the UDO requirements for connectivity. That's a UDO issue, that's really not up to us.
Okay, got it. All right. I think that was really my only question. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Durkin. Commissioner Miller.
Thank you very much. I think it's kind of ironic that the property would be put in a conservation subdivision. It's not anything I'm against, but since all the trees have been cut down, and by the way, those of you who are relying on the aerial photograph that's in your packet, if you have not been out to this property, you'll see that there is, if I'm not mistaken, every single tree on it has been cut down. And that happened about 3 or 4 years ago. And when that happened, the neighbors who lived on Cotherstone and Genesee and the streets in the subdivision just to the south began to contact me about what was going to happen on the property. Of course, I really didn't know, but so I've had some connection. I've driven out there. It is a remarkable piece of property because as you go up Terry, you climb and climb and climb, and when you get to the top there, I don't know if you had a chance to do it, and you get out of your car and look, you are in fact on a mountain, at least relative, one of the highest places in the county, and you can see a very great distance. It's remarkably lovely. It's a pity that the trees were removed if this property is going to wind up in a conservation subdivision. It seems to me, though, that one of the things that we could get the staff to answer is whether or not if this property, if this rezoning is approved, and if the developer brings in at site plan review a conservation subdivision, whether that Genesee connection will be required. Is there anybody in staff that will explain how that works?
Erling Thomas is on the call and might be the best person to speak to that. She is familiar with this project or the property.
Erling Thomas, Transportation. So yes, at the time of site plan, the connection would be required under the UDO.
And the only exception to that would be if there was some sort of intervening natural feature or something that was important to preserve?
Correct. It would have to be an environmental restraint that prevented the connection from being made.
Right, like a stream or something like that, or a sudden drop in elevation.
Correct.
And I've been to the end of Genesee there and looked over, and it doesn't really seem like, I didn't see anything like that. And with all the trees cut down, you can see pretty far. So it's likely that a Genesee connection will be required. And of course, at this time, this is to Patrick. I don't know how far along your clients are, Patrick, in their planning, but if you were to save half the property and put 80 lots on the other half of the property, of course, you don't have to use half the property. You have to save at least half the property. Do you have any idea how they would organize the residences on the property? In other words, is this will the development happen down towards the Genesee end, or will it be spread on either side of Terry, or is it too early to actually talk about those things?
It's on the whole, it's too early to talk about it because the driving factor is going to be what the county health department will approve for septic.
Right.
Septic treatment. But it is fairly evenly spread on both sides of Terry, to give you a general answer. That I think that it's fair to say the development is evenly spread on both sides of Terry Road. The house lots are evenly distributed, more or less on both sides of Terry Road, although obviously probably a few more to the south since most of the land is on the south.
Mm-hmm. And so, and because you're going to be looking for drain fields in a difficult place for drain fields, each of the lots that you create for the 80 units is probably going to be as big as it needs to be in order to put in a septic tank. Is that a fair assumption?
It is really, it's really difficult to determine that at this point in time because it's all driven by what we've looked at the soils, and that 80 lot count is based on our just looking at the soils maps, thinking what's viable. But we really can't commit to anything because that's really based on an individual lot by lot determination.
Right.
And then of course an individual lot by lot determination by the county health department.
And so my next comment it concerns the subdivision to the south. If I'm not mistaken, there's a community water system in there, but the houses are on septic tanks, and a great many of the houses, well, I strike that. At least some of the houses in that subdivision actually have fairly elaborate septic systems that involve pumps and bull run valves and alternating drain fields and those kinds of things. Do you anticipate that would be the same thing on this piece of property?
Probably not, Commissioner Miller, because those were permitted a long time ago, and the standards have changed dramatically.
If anything, they've become...
It's much stricter. It's much stricter. So these lots will be, in general, much larger than the lots to the south. In general, each lot, to the extent we figured this out, each lot will be much larger than the typical lots adjoining this assemblage, this 114 acres to the south.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. So in my 7 years on the Planning Commission, I believe this is the very first residential subdivision that's come to us where it was going to be well and septic tank. And it's certainly the farthest north. Grace, I had a question for you. In our materials, unless I've misunderstood the maps, which, as you know, I'm capable of doing, is there a map that shows us? Okay, so if this is no longer in the city, where is the city-county line?
So this was a satellite annexation. So the city-county line is quite a bit south of here.
So this actually makes the city-county line more logical than it was last year.
Correct. This was a satellite. This was probably our furthest, one of the furthest away from the corporate boundary satellite that we had. And, as far as satellites go.
And to the extent that the annexation of this property offered the residents up this end of Guest Road the opportunity or the hope for city utilities, the de-annexation of the property by the General Assembly is, at least for the time being, dashed that.
Right, that's correct. There are no plans to extend utilities to this area, right? So at this time.
So I hope we have addressed most of the residents' concerns. And Patrick, can I get a commitment from you that even if this rezoning passes and that there will be no further requirements for neighborhood meetings, will your developer client be willing to agree to a meeting or two to let those people who live on Cotherstone and Genesee and Scaly Bark know what you have in mind and how your project is shaping up?
Sure, that'd be fine, Commissioner Miller. Let me share my direct telephone number. It's 919-590-0384, 919-590-0384. Feel free to give me a call. That's my direct line. I return calls within 24 hours. in general. I might take Christmas off, just full disclosure. And happy to talk. Again, we'll feel free to call, and once we turn in the conservation subdivision, that'll be available through the land development office on the planning department's website.
And so finally, Mr. Chairman, I note that as Grace did in the memorandum, RR is depending upon which way your zoning scale works, is the bottom. It's the least thing that we can zone this property to, and without sewer and water, it's very hard for us to try to influence the way this property is developed in a way that achieves some of the things we've been talking about over the last few months with regard to residential development. RR is as far as we can go in terms of reserving the property, and even in RR, you can develop the property. I'm glad to hear that if it is to be developed in RR, that they are looking at a conservation subdivision. I will say this is, again, if you had a chance to drive out there, certainly one of the most remarkable sites in Durham in terms of its of how different it is. It's to climb up that hill and to look out in all directions is pretty amazing. I envy whoever it is whose driveway starts where Terry stops. That's a beautiful place.
Thanks, Commissioner Miller. I don't see any other commissioners who have raised their hands, and I think we're ready for a motion. I plan to support this as well. This is just such an interesting case. You stay on the Planning Commission long enough, I guess you see a case like this. I've never seen one like this before. And I think it makes a lot of sense given the circumstances. So if someone would like to make a motion, a commissioner, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, with regard to case Z2000026A, is that right? Is that the number?
That is correct.
Then the Terry Road Deannexation rezoning, move that we send this case forward to the Board of County Commissioners with a favorable report.
Seconded.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Morgan, and we will have a roll call vote.
Amendolia.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Busby.
Yes.
Cameron.
Yes.
Durkin.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Kinchin.
Yes.
McIver.
Yes.
Miller. Morgan.
Yes.
And Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. It passes 11-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Same to you.
Take care. Hope to see you soon, guys.
So we have two new business items to wrap up this evening. The first is the industrial land use study, and that is an informational item that the staff, I think, will present to us.
Hi, yes. Brooke Anzer, City County Planning. I am sharing my screen. And we'll begin. Are you all able to see this? Wonderful. So hello, I will be reviewing the 2020 Industrial Land Use Study with you this evening. This is an update and expansion upon the 2013 Industrial Land Use Study, and it will be used as a tool providing guidance specifically to staff and decision makers surrounding industrially designated areas in the existing comprehensive plan. And just to note, this was carried out in conjunction with the Greater Durham Chamber of Commerce. So tonight I will be covering the study's purpose, guiding policies, future industrial employment projections in Durham, how we calculated future industrial land demand and carried out a suitability analysis. And lastly, I will walk us through the study's key findings. So the purpose of the 2020 industrial land use study is to determine how much industrial land will be needed or demanded within the community in the future, and also which areas designated industrial by the existing comprehensive plan are the most optimal for industrial development. So understanding the need and suitability of industrial areas will help inform decisions and decision makers on where industrial development should or should not occur with regards to the future land use map of the current comprehensive plan. So while this is not an adopted plan, it acts as a resource or tool to help guide decisions on whether zoning changes and amendments to the comprehensive plan, more specifically the FLUM, are valid or reasonable when changing from industrial to another category. So here are guiding policies from the 2005 comprehensive plan that directs the industrial land use study. Industrial is defined as land used for manufacturing, processing, warehousing and distribution, resource extraction, research and development, flex space, and service uses. So this study covers land designated industrial, industrial light, and industrial park in the FLUM. The second policy listed just directs the development of the study. So industrial employment projections were found using the 2050 Woods and Pool population and employment forecasts from 2019. Industrial employment remained relatively constant from 2010 to 2050. And as you can see, there are approximately 43,000 projected industrial employees in 2050. The number of employees projected for 2050 was multiplied by 0.01, and this is the square footage of industrial space per employee. The number was determined using tax assessor data for occupied building space and 2019 industrial employment projections. So the industrial land demand for the year 2050 was found to be approximately 470 acres. So the suitability of industrial land was determined through 9 different metrics. 6 of those metrics were used in a scoring system to rate all industrial areas in Durham. These criteria were given a numerical score. The final and total scores range from 0 to 14, with 14 being the most suitable. Additionally, 3 other criteria were used in the analysis to determine which industrial areas would need additional development requirements to preserve and protect environmental and residential areas, along with ensuring equitable development. The supplementary criteria do not contribute to the area's overall suitability score, but are flagged to bring attention to and require further investigation of areas by staff and decision makers. I also wanted to point out that the high scoring areas may not necessarily mean that they are optimal for development. There are caveats, supplementary criteria, and further discussion to be considered for specific sites and parcels. So here are some of the suitability score criteria mapped out. Those starred are not shown. Along with the report, staff has access to a WebGIS map so they can review specific sites and areas. So here you can see the water service area, the sewer service area, area within 1/2 mile of a railroad, and area within 1/2 mile of a major road. So now I'm going to highlight supplementary criteria, specifically the equity criteria. So for this, 6 equity measures were used to flag where there may be equity concerns in industrial areas. Industrial areas were flagged if they exceeded the corresponding Durham County statistic. It is recommended that the flagged areas are further reviewed and discussed in conjunction with the suitability criteria when making land use decisions. So now we'll briefly be covering the suitability score results. So there were many high scoring industrial areas, with 5 having that highest score possible, as you can see here. So this map shows the most suitable areas, shown in green, based on the suitability criteria. There were approximately 7,000 acres scoring 12 or higher, and about 3,000 scoring 14, which is the highest possible score. To conclude, the study found that by the year 2050, there will be about 43,000 industrial employees, and there will be about 470 acres of industrial land needed or demanded. Additionally, the suitability analysis that rated and scored all FLUM industrial areas determined there are about 3,000 acres of highly suitable land, scoring 14. So of course, the supplementary criteria must be considered, and there must be more discussion and investigation for specific sites. Durham County has a surplus of industrial land to accommodate 2050 projections. I wanted to cover some assumptions the study made. These include that vacant land is more suitable than occupied or built land, though there is a note within the report that retrofitting should be taken into consideration for specific sites. Also, industrial areas have direct access to roads and railroads. And all listed criteria represent all potential limiting factors contributing to a site's suitability for industrial land. So again, this is a tool to help inform decisions and should include additional staff review and input. So with that, I know that was a lot of information, but I'm happy to take any questions at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Ganser. Really appreciate the report. I will say I've seen some of this in some other meetings as well. It's really helpful from my perspective, and I appreciate having the information in our reports that give the suitability score and that reference this report, because as we're seeing proposals to move land out of industrial into residential, which is what we most often see, I personally have just found it helpful to then be able to see, here's how much land scores the highest in industrial, which means that some of the other land may be available. So thanks to you and to the staff. It's just one more thing that I think helps us make more informed and better decisions as planning commissioners, and I'm sure the governing body feels the same way. With that said, Commissioner Miller, you raised your hand as well, so I want to recognize you.
Thank you. So we had 2 scored industrial sites up among our cases tonight. The first one, Page Road, if I remember correctly, scored a 12. I get that. The Hazel Street site, which is a less than 1 acre parcel, almost half of which is affected by a stream and has a railway right-of-way running along one side of it that is 15 to 20 feet above it in elevation, graded 11. How did that happen? And I know it's a 1 to 14 scale, but if that got an 11, I don't know how bad a piece of property has to be to get worse than 11. How did that happen?
So I don't have the specifics for that Hazel site. I think Mike or Scott Whiteman might know.
Yeah, good evening, Commissioner Miller. This is Scott Whiteman. So I think I will have to say that Hazel Street site was a interesting test drive for using this in analysis. So the Hazel Street site was part of a larger purple, for lack of a better term, industrial blob on the future land use map.
So is it graded by the blob or by the parcel?
By the blob.
Okay, well then I get it. That answers the question.
And that's why
the property on the other side of the railroad tracks, it could easily be an 11, but Hazel Street, not so much.
Yeah, and that's why what Brooke was talking about, where we need to do further analysis. And so when you zoom in on the map of the Hazel Street, you're like, okay, this is not a really good industrial site. And it just, even if it was, just the way it was located with residential on on multiple sides, it makes sense to rezone it to another category. I missed that part of the meeting, so I don't know what you all decided, but so anyway, that's why we want to use this as just information. I think Chair Busby was getting at that, information for you all to use when you're considering these cases, but it's not a plan where you're bound by what that number or score is.
Right. Well, thank you. And the other question I have, if tomorrow I wanted to figure out what an industrial site was scored, how would I go about it?
So we have a WebGIS map that it's only available to planners right now. You would have to probably contact one of us and we could figure that out for you, work with you.
I appreciate that. We know where you live. Thanks.
We're working on getting that available more widely, but it takes a while to get quality control of GIS data. So right now you have to call us. Sorry, Commissioner Miller.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, I also had a question as I was going through the two that had industrial uses for this month. My question was more about how you look at removing property from the industrial flum, but on the aggregate, because these properties, were 20 acres or however small numbers. But if you look at, and even a larger site by itself may not be impactful, but if you have multiple applications happening in somewhat condensed time period or even over a year or two, then how do you factor that in, that in the aggregate you're removing more than just this specific application?
So I'll answer that one, Brooke, unless you really want to. So Commissioner Durkin, what we found is we have way more industrial designated land than we need. And so it would take a lot of changes for us to not have enough industrial land to meet our future employment demands. We originally did this study in 2016 or 2014. And so we can continue doing similar studies in the future to make sure, to determine the impacts of any changes. But I think even a relatively large change from industrial to another use is not going to affect our overall ability to accommodate industrial employment in the future.
Okay. I am just worried about everything going to PDR. And removes a lot of different employment opportunities in the area and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and certainly we hope that you can use the scores from the industrial land study to help you make the decision about whether it's something we should hold on to for industrial purposes in the future and not give in to the immediate demand for residential, or if it's a not very feasible site for industrial and that some other use is more appropriate. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, you all and the elected officials can still use whatever judgment you see fit to make that decision.
Well, we seem to use one set of judgment and the elected officials seem to use another on various applications. But that's just an aside. But I really appreciate this. I think this was really helpful, especially on a month where we have 2 industrial removals.
Yeah, that was an accident, but we're glad you could see how it might be useful.
Hey folks, I'm back. So as I said in Hamilton, what did I miss?
It's Commissioner Amendolia's turn.
Go for it. Thank you. Thank you for keeping it moving.
Thank you, Chair. First off, I want to thank the staff for this. I personally really enjoy these reports. I like getting really nerdy about them and appreciate anytime they're brought. And I just have a question about future study and research that'll be done with this, especially regarding some of the equity measures. And so I'm curious, first off, if you have an idea of the acres that have scored like a 12 or higher, how many of those acres have also scored high on some of those equity measures? And if you don't know that answer, I'm curious just what further research y'all intend to do with those measures.
So I don't have that answer for you offhand. I can certainly find that out for you. With the comprehensive plan, we are working on doing some equity research, and so that's a further area of study that, something like this could be expanded upon. Of course, this was, there was not an equity criteria for the 2013 plan or industrial land use study. So this is definitely a first draft of this. And so this may be shifted in future.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Okay, I don't see anyone else. So Ms. Ganser, thank you. And Mr. Whiteman, really appreciate the update and the report and the information. And we will move to our final item this evening. And this is what we added for tonight. That Commissioner Baker has been chairing the policy committee that the Planning Commission set up. And just a quick review that we set this up when we were still meeting in person, and Commissioner Baker is chairing the committee. I want to thank the committee members, and I know Commissioner Baker will reference who's currently serving on the committee, who had a few meetings early on, and then we reconstituted the membership on the committee, and the committee asked to give an update on its work and to give us a preview of some of the work product that will be coming our way. So Commissioner Baker, I'm going to hand it to you, and I believe you should be able to just share your screen with the presentation you put together.
Yeah. Can everybody see that? All right. Thank you, Chair Busby. Just going to provide a quick update on the policy committee. Let's see here. So far we've had 4 meetings to date. We started in June. So we had a meeting in June, July. Then we went through a period of time where we didn't have any meetings. And then we had 2 more meetings last month, November 5th, November 24th. We started with 5 members. Commissioner Al-Turk and Santiago left the commission. Then Commissioner Amendolia joined the commission. And so we currently have 4 members. Myself, Carmen Williams, Commissioner Miller, and Commissioner Amendolia. So we have space for 3 more commissioners if folks are interested in what we're working on. So we really formed this committee out of, I think, kind of a buildup of different concerns, ideas, opportunities that I think various other commissioners thought that we should be able to pursue. So we're kind of observing the different issues coming before us in all of the applications, and realizing that many of those issues were consistent from application to application. We were sort of recognizing that, there were, I know it's still only 2020. The Sunrise Movement happened at the beginning of the year, the movement for Black Lives. And so there have been these big grassroots movements that have taken place around the country that also took place in Durham, as well as other local movements. And so sort of the need to respond to those. Also just the desire to address equity and sustainability issues, to address issues with some of these very large kind of disconnected rezoning and annexation cases that we see so frequently, and the need to put in place better standards there. And then also to help make the review process more predictable for residents, for our commission, for elected officials, for developers, et cetera. So in the rules of procedure, 4.9, the commission may at its sole discretion establish committees. We've established a committee. The committee shall charge to every committee, and every committee shall report on its activities as it is directed to do so by the commission. So we are reporting now, and And we also have a charge that I'll briefly show you, but we're not going to look at the charge in depth. It's also addressed in the Durham UDO 319.1 and 319.2, state that a request to amend the text of this ordinance may be initiated by the Planning Commission. And when the text amendment is initiated, the Planning Department shall draft an appropriate ordinance. One thing to note there is we wouldn't draft anything that would just go straight to the elected body. Any work that we do, any work that we produce goes to the Planning Department and is initiated through a typical text amendment process. Here's what our draft charge looks like. Like I said, I'm not going to go in depth on this. I think that you all will be receiving a document with the draft charge, and you'll have more time to look at that, and we can have a discussion about it. But this is we spent a couple of meetings looking this over, making sure we were comfortable with it before we wanted to bring it up to you all to have a look at. So if you recall, several months ago, we sent out a survey to all of the different planning commissioners. That survey included a long list of existing policies in the current comprehensive plan. Basically what the survey did was listed each of those policies that seemed most relevant to the work that we do, and allowed each commissioner to respond whether they thought that each of those policies was very well implemented, but should do more implementation is needed. Basically provide a response to this to help us prioritize the work that we're doing. And it also helps us just reaffirm that this committee is actually serving a purpose. And I think that the responses that we received basically affirmed that we are serving a purpose. A lot of commissioners felt that there was work that could be done, work for us to do. And then each of those policies was scored based on the responses that was provided by all 10 of the commissioners that responded. And that helped us sort of prioritize the different issues to work on. So here's a 2-slide list here, but you can see on the left-hand side the score that each policy was given. So the top priorities of commissioners, what came out of this was it was sustainability and energy efficiency in building design, having better accessibility to and proximity to green space, having better connectivity and block length, making commercial and mixed use buildings, making the design of those more amenable to pedestrians and transit riders, addressing public parks in new development, addressing housing variety in new development, and addressing various other topics such as garage placement in the rear of buildings. And there were a variety of other themes and ideas that came out of this. There were some open-ended comments that were provided by various commissioners on a variety of different topics that you can see listed on this slide. So we came up with a tentative list of work items. We've discussed these. I'm sure you know they can change and evolve, but this is sort of currently where they stand. Looking at street connectivity and block length standards in the UDO, looking at pedestrian and transit-oriented building design standards, green building standards, which of course came up many times, looking at new or revised suburban tier walkable zoning districts, looking at public park dedication standards, and then considering putting together a memorandum that would make recommendations on things that we don't necessarily have the power to change directly. And currently what we are working on is that first bullet point there, which is the street connectivity. So we're currently in the process of finalizing that amendment to ensure that new development includes more connected streets, both within and between new neighborhoods. So next steps will be to bring the amendment to the Planning Commission, hopefully in January. That will just be for your initial reviews and we can have a discussion. But we're really hoping to be able to present a resolution to initiate a text amendment in February. And so that would be an action by the Planning Commission. And remember, that's not an action like we would typically see. That's not an action that would go on to the elected officials. That is to initiate the actual text amendment, and then it would start the text amendment process. So if the resolution were to be approved, the text amendment process would be initiated, and eventually the Planning Commission would see that text amendment again, probably slightly in a slightly changed form. And then, of course, once that starts, then the policy committee will develop, I think, a little bit more refined work timeline, and then we'll go ahead and begin to work on some of the other tentative work items. And that is it for today. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions from my fellow commissioners.
That's great. Thanks, Commissioner Baker, and everyone that's been serving on the committee. Really appreciate your time and your effort. Commissioners, any questions or feedback? And there you go. Thanks, Commissioner Baker. I don't see anyone raising their hand, so mostly we wanted to just talk about it today so you knew where the committee stood and you knew what to expect in terms of timing. And Commissioner Baker, I think the committee is planning to try to meet one more time this year. And so I think we'll keep you posted, obviously. I think as you heard from Commissioner Baker, the goal would be to see if we could have something on the January agenda. And I think we're trying to just make sure there's full transparency on the work that we're doing. And I think we can just work with the staff in terms of making sure that we add it to an agenda where we can get the information in the packet and that it gets out to everybody, including the public, and that there's enough time and space for us to really deliberate on that item. Okay, any other final questions or comments?
So I do. It's a question for staff. If I'm not mistaken, the city council had on its agenda this week appointing somebody for the Al Turk seat. Did that happen? And can you tell us who it is and what we know about the new member?
That is correct. There was an appointment made. I just saw the appointment letter go out today. I need to double check the name. Actually, Chair Busby can probably give you more information. He has been communicating with the new member. I will be setting up orientation with the new member in the next couple of weeks, but I'll let Chair Busby take that. But we do have a new member.
Yeah, his name is Gary Cutright, and he was, I think it was official yesterday, so he got the email today, and I think he will look to get sworn in the next week or so, and will be with us. Hopefully we'll have the orientation, but I believe he'll be with us in January. I encouraged him to listen tonight. I'm not sure if he was able to watch or not this evening. He said he was going to try to watch us.
So what can you tell us about Gary?
I was just on the email that said he was approved.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
I could go back and look up his application, but you can look on the city council agenda and there should be an attachment with his information.
Oh, all right. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
I often think we don't actually get to know who the new folks are like we should, maybe. But,
well, the good thing is we have so many meetings in the future, smaller group meetings, that hopefully it would be a good time to get to know someone, you know, with retreat meetings and small committee meetings.
so you told us that our January agenda is slammed. What's on it?
It is full right now. Hang on one second and I'll take a quick look. Well, we have the two continued cases. Chandler Run is coming back, that was continued, and then the item tonight that was continued on Page Road. We have an info item, but that could wait till February. If it has to, we can bump it to February to keep the agenda a little shorter. It looks like we have three other zoning cases that are slated or we're prepping right now. So
Do we have the case for the development behind Neal Middle School?
Yes, Falls Village North is being right now. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, thank
as
you.
well as zoning cases.
Great, thank you. Before we wrap up, I did want to just, number one, I want to confirm this, and if it's true, I want to just give a moment to thank Commissioner Johnson. And Commissioner Johnson, you indicated that you were planning to wrap up your service at the end of this year, which would be tonight's meeting. Is that still your plan?
That is still the plan.
Okay. Well, I'll open it up to others as well, and I certainly hope you can come join us in January or February so we can have a resolution to thank you for your service. But thanks for all your work. I've really, really enjoyed getting to know you personally, and have always appreciated your really wise comments. Tonight was a great example of you really read your packet, you ask the really good, smart questions. I'm going to miss serving with you, but really appreciate what you brought to this community and wish you the best of luck. It sounds like you got some big new plans ahead of you. So thanks for everything. And I'm going to open the floor to you for any final comments, and then other commissioners.
I'm a man of few words when I'm not asking questions about applications. So it's just been a great experience. And, you know, at this point in time, you know, looking forward, I think it's the proper time for me to step aside and allow some fresh blood and energy to fill in my spot on the commission, and hopefully continue to move forward what we envision for Durham. And so best wishes to everyone. And I'm still here in the area. So if you need to reach out, feel free. So best wishes to everyone. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Others can jump in if you would like.
So I want to echo too. I'm very, very sorry to see you go. Your point of view and the experience you've brought to us, your advocacy for the interests of the folks I call ordinary people, very, very valuable, very insightful. Be very difficult shoes to fill, and so I'll be sorry to see you go, Cedric.
Don't worry, I will start more regularly asking what the price point is so that that question is not missed from our meetings.
Thank you.
Cedric, they put it in the packet now. I mean, that's how much
they do. They do.
Oh yeah, I as an aside, I would like to point out I really like that little section.
So I wanted to say quickly that we have a few more surprises coming your way. We're going to continue to add things to the staff reports. I know Commissioner Baker asked for a few things particularly, but we had already drafted these reports at the time that we had our retreat. And I want to just thank the staff because Danny Coltra, Mike Stock, Alexander Cahill, they worked on adding all of those things to the report for this month. I mean, they were juggling, trying to make it happen. So shout out to them, and we'll continue to make improvements. And we hope you like the flow, the new flow of the template. I think it's a better flowing report. But if you have any suggestions or questions, please let us know.
Thank you very, very much. I like it too. But when we throw stuff like that in there, I think when it's not committed, I think we need to be reminded of that. I don't want to get into a situation where developers are throwing stuff out to persuade us, which after they get their rezoning, they can do whatever they want.
Right. The price point or the real estate comps that we actually added those, the staff did, but we can put a disclaimer on there about that maybe in the report. And I think, Mr. Miller, I made a note tonight that you would like to see on these text only cases a little clearer somewhere in the report, clearer identity of what the text only commitment is, and we'll make sure we do that as well.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. If there aren't any final comments, I just wanted to say to all of you fellow commissioners and to the staff, I hope you all have a very happy, healthy, safe holiday season. Looking forward to a brighter future in 2021, hopefully being with you again when it's safe to do so, but really appreciate all of your service and working with all of you. So happy holidays, and look forward to seeing you in January. So hope you all stay safe, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.